Welcome to Wall Street Unspun with your host, Peter Schiff.
But it's a giant bubble in search of a pin, and it's going to find one.
Are you confused with the ups and downs of the economy and what it means to you?
Don't believe the propaganda, and that's what it is. When you're listening to an analyst on a lot of these popular financial shows, you're not getting investment advice. You're getting propaganda.
Get ready to untangle the web of misinformation provided by the mainstream media.
These firms are trying to sell you stocks. Their real clients, their banking clients, are trying to get rid of stock.
And now, here's your host of Wall Street Unspun, the president of Euro Pacific Capital and a licensed broker with a passion for truth. It's Wall Street Unspun with Peter Schiff.
Good evening, good evening, good evening. My name is Neeraj Chaudhry, and I'm sitting in this evening for Peter Schiff, the host of Wall Street Unspun. I'm coming to you from the Los Angeles branch of Euro Pacific Capital, and it is my sincere pleasure, as always, to be joining you this evening. I think we are looking at a very, very pivotal point in the U.S. economy. This is something that Peter has been talking about for a very, very, very long time. The president last week, President Obama, came out and started talking about a secondary stimulus bill, a secondary quote-unquote jobs bill. And this is something that Peter has been talking about for a very long time, which is that we are out of bullets. The U.S. consumer is in debt past his eyeballs, and what his concern has always been is not the recession that we need to have once we have these inflationary booms, have a deflationary bust in terms of real gold, purge the debt from the system, get back to capital formation, get back to business development, get back to savings, get back to production. Instead of allowing the economy to correct, what Obama and his fellow Democratic colleagues in the House and the Senate are attempting to do is juice the economy up with even more stimulus. They're talking about $80 billion. Someone said $150 billion. A billion here, a billion there. Pretty soon you're talking real money. At this point, with the secondary stimulus that is being contemplated, with the healthcare quote-unquote compromise that is being contemplated, that could be something like $1 trillion. And with the now nationalized housing market, there was a report in the New York Times a couple of weeks ago that FHA is now subsidizing or insuring, rather, 96% of all new mortgages in the United States. And then this evening, there's now another $31 billion tax break, which in theory is a good thing. We always want to see taxes cut, but they're not backing it up with spending. But with all these programs, whether it's health care, whether it's this jobs bill that the president is talking about, or whether it's any of the other spending that they're engaging in, they are not allowing the U.S. economy to simply fall into recession and correct. We have been on this spending spree, this spending binge, like an alcoholic for 35 or 40 years, and what the alcoholic needs is to dry out. We need to stop all this spending. We need to stop all this debt. And if we don't, like the alcoholic, our economy is going to be completely destroyed. We are on the ropes right now. I don't know if it's the 8th round or the 10th round, but if they keep passing these bills, if they keep wanting to increase taxes and increase spending and increase regulation, they're going to cut what little life the U.S. economy has. They're going to cut it right out from us. So, unfortunately, we're at a pivotal point. I'm looking at an article from the Associated Press from earlier today that the president and some of his Democratic colleagues in the Congress have reached a quote-unquote healthcare compromise, which is going to result in the nationalization of the healthcare sector along with the banking sector. So I guess we're just headed down that direction. I am by nature an optimist, as is Peter, But when we see these things take place in the U.S. economy, especially in the U.S. government, it gets very frustrating. It's funny, on the same day that the president was holding his jobs summit last week, I was talking to one of my clients up in the Pacific Northwest who runs a small landscaping business, and she's getting into fertilizer and some other sectors, and she was trying to figure out how to add another person to her sales staff, with all the taxes and the regulatory things that she has to go through. And on the same day that she, in the private sector, was adding a real job, the administration, President Obama, was having this big job summit about how can the government create jobs. The way they can create jobs is by just getting out of the way of the private sector. My client up in the Pacific Northwest didn't need the president to tell her to hire somebody to add to the sales staff. All she had to do was see the demand from consumers. She makes a very good product, apparently, and add a staff member to deal with her consumers. That's how you create jobs. The private sector creates jobs, not the public sector. The public sector, all the public sector can do is tax the citizens, reduce the jobs that are going to take place in the economy, and then subsidize and create other government jobs in the economy, but do it much less efficiently. The government can't produce anything. So, unfortunately, we're at a pivotal point. I saw an article in the New York Times also about the new Tea Party and the resulting potential fracture in the GOP with fiscal conservatives. We need a party of fiscal conservatism, and we need true fiscal conservatives in the economy that will just allow the economy to correct and to get off the binge that we've been on for these many years, and hopefully rebuild our country, rebuild our economy. That hasn't been happening yet, but Peter is definitely excited about this, the run for Senate. He is now, if you go to shiftforsenate.com, spell out FOR, so shiftforsenate.com, you can donate to his campaign. You can offer to volunteer. He's through the generous support of the people out in the entire country. He's raised about $1.2 million, and he's getting donations daily. He has a goal right now of raising about $2 million, and so we'd love to be able to support him and see him reach that goal. Peter will actually be joining us at the bottom of the hour, so hopefully we will be able to have him join us and share his views with us as well. But I'd like to start and reach out to Dennis in Ohio. Welcome.
Hello. How you doing?
Show. I'm well, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well. I've just been looking at these issues, thankful to Peter and all his ideas and his staff, including yourself. And I'd have to see a connection between what's going on in Copenhagen and the world currencies being troubled, the fiat currencies struggling along. The talks about replacing the dollar as a reserve currency. Clearly, the SDRs, or the special drawing rights of the IMF, isn't going to cover it wholly. They've been talked about a basket of currencies and precious metals. And I just can't help but think that there's actually a carbon credit type of issue. If they can tax what you breathe, if they can tax what you exhale, if they can basically require you to have a paper to go about your daily living, it would actually be able to supplant a currency in and of itself.
Yeah, it reminds me, when you're talking about taxing this and taxing that, there's an old song, great old song by the Beatles called Taxman, where they talk about, if you're too cold, I'll tax your feet. If you try to go for a walk, I'll tax your feet. It's funny. It's a funny song, but it's good. What's your question?
My question is do you think that the activities of the climate gate being ignored and how the science is being brought in question, do you actually think that these carbon credits is some backdoor way of actually trying to create a currency of requiring people to trade in and engage in these carbon credits? That's a really interesting angle. I'll be perfectly honest with you. I am not much of a conspiracy theorist. I think that,
I'm coming up on 40 here very shortly. I've had quite a bit of experience in the business world and just in the world, and it occurs to me that the world is less conspiratorial than it is just kind of inertia and bureaucratic and just kind of dumb. I mean, I see a lot of people make a lot of decisions that you kind of question later and say, why did you make that decision? And they don't really have an answer for it. So, is this carbon credit thing going to result in some sort of backdoor currency? I would say that's speculative and conspiratorial, and I'm just not very good at those.
What do you think the most likely replacement currency will be then? If the dollar does, when it's likely to talk about it, losing its reserve status, what would you think the most likely candidate would be?
Well, all the currencies are really fiat currencies, but I think that looking out ahead, capital is really the question. How we break it up into a currency is really less the issue. The real question is, where does capital go? And capital will go where businesses are productive, where economies are productive, where capital will go where it finds a home. So if that's in Asia, because that's where people are saving and producing, that's where the government is even though it's there are government involvement in Asia, you still have a good climate for growing businesses.
I guess my question would be, if the public becomes jaded of fiat currencies, which I agree with you, that's pretty much what we have predominated.
Which we have for thousands of years.
If they want to have something backing it, but the precious metals is obviously a great example.
Metals,
it's going to be seashells or something.
Eventually, when the all fiat currencies will go to zero, eventually I do think that the gold standard will make a comeback because it's real money. But how and when we get there, I'm not sure. But thank you very much for your call. I do appreciate it. We are going to move on now to Adam in Texas. Welcome.
Hey, how's it going?
Pretty good. How are you doing, Adam?
Doing fine.
What's your question this evening?
I don't have a question. I have a quick comment.
Sure.
I moved down here to Texas. I'm from New York. I signed up for the Air Force. I'm an Air Force officer. Joined because of 9/11. So I like to see myself as a bit of a patriot. And it was about a year ago now.
Thank you for your service.
Don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. But I just about a year ago that I moved down here, and also about a year ago that I first heard about Peter Schiff. Saw some YouTube videos of him. And, he gets knocked a lot for being, criticized as not being a patriot. But I just want to say that he is, a true patriot. I want to give him, my vote of confidence and, my own personal stamp of approval. It's the likes of him, Murray Rothbard, Ludwig von Mises, all those people I just started reading, voraciously over the last year. And it's definitely helped make me a better American. And, I'm getting really excited for his Senate race. And I think it's something we should all get excited for because it's a chance for, all of us, turn back this tide of statism, return the country back to its founding and go back to liberty.
Right. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I know Peter appreciates that. I think he does take a lot of criticism, and I think he takes it sort of in good humor because he doesn't try to take it personally. He doesn't try to, argue with people. He's just making statements that are consistent with the founding of our country, and he has views that are consistent with the founding of our country. So if people want to criticize him for it, as his friend, I would much rather see them criticize his views than call into question his patriotism, because he's really not saying anything that's very controversial. He's just talking about capitalism. He's talking about the basics of a sound economy. He's talking about a gold standard which preserves the wealth of the country instead of allowing it to be destroyed as the dollar has been destroyed. So, this is the kind of thing I'd like to see people discuss with him are his ideas as opposed to attacking his patriotism. But I'm afraid that's apparently not the culture that we're in right now politically.
I also just think they're trying to go for a cheap cop out instead of trying to debate his ideas. They're just trying to attack his character, and basically, like he likes the phrase he likes to use, build up a straw man when it's actually not there at all and tear it down.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I'd much rather see a debate in the marketplace of ideas and let the best ideas win. But thank you very much for your call, and I'll certainly pass this along to Peter. As I said, he should be joining us in a few minutes. He said he was going to be joining us probably at the bottom of the hour, so hopefully we will be able to hear from him. I wanted to also share the number with you. The number is 888-678-9597. This is Wall Street Unspun with Peter Schiff. My name is Neeraj Chaudhary. I am an investment consultant in the Los Angeles branch of Euro Pacific Capital, and it is my sincere pleasure to be with you here today. Very often, I'm pleased to be able to talk to some international callers. I don't see any international callers on the board yet, but if there's anyone listening overseas that can talk to us about conditions abroad, how businesses are doing, how the economies are doing, we'd love to hear from you. Let's now Christina in Washington, D.C. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to the show. Christina in Washington, D.C., are you there? Christina, okay. I guess Christina is not there. Maybe we'll put her on hold and see if she can come back to the show. Let's go on now to Eric in North Carolina. Welcome to the show.
Hey, how are you doing this evening?
I'm well, sir. How are you, Eric?
I'm doing very good. My question for you is that all over the news right now, people are talking about the $700 billion in TARP money and how they're planning on giving a portion of that back to pay down the deficit and possibly using $200 billion of that for job creation. Those are kind of the things being tossed around. But
yeah, I'm going to stop you right there. Quote-unquote job creation. I just want to make it clear. The government does not create any jobs. It can tax one side of the economy and inefficiently move the jobs to the other side of the economy, but they're not creating anything. They're really just inefficiently moving stuff from one side of the room to the other side of the room. Anyway, what's your question?
Well, unfortunately, I guess before I get there real quick, unfortunately, it's actually worse than that because they're not moving from one side to the other. They're actually borrowing from foreigners, so they're moving it away from us and the value of our currency, and they're also having to charge interest on that. So, but my question is, the $700 billion, was that factored into the 2009 fiscal year deficit of $1.4 trillion? Was that money part of that? Because I heard Peter speak the other night where he said they're talking about giving some of this money back like we actually had it in the first place. So was that something to be borrowed, or is that something that has already been put on the books? And if they actually do give it back, in reality, it will in some way pay down a deficit. Do you know how that's factored in?
You know, the Congress is playing so many games now with the federal budget in terms of what they consider to be on balance sheet versus what they consider to be off balance sheet, and what the CBO considers to be on balance sheet and what the CBO considers to be off balance sheet. It's really kind of a joke.
Right.
You know, to be perfectly frank with you, they've mucked it up so much that no one can tell you what they've spent and what they haven't spent. So in terms of, what are we going to get back? I don't know what we're going to quote unquote get back, but it doesn't look like the administration is going to do anything in terms of trying to pay off this deficit. It looks like what Obama said as well, we're going to selectively use this TARP money for some spending. And so whether it's been spent or not, or whether it's, whether it's been accounted for or not, or allocated or not, is really not the point. The point is these guys are going to spend. So whether it's, I don't know if it's been accounted for or not, but
that was my estimation, and based on I heard John Williams from Shadow Stats the other day, and he said the total of off balance sheet and on balance sheet last year was somewhere around $8 trillion. So my guess was that $700 billion was some of that off balance sheet information that obviously no one really has access to.
There's a terrific institute in Washington, D.C. called the Pete Peterson Institute. They publish real deficit figures where they publish all of the they try to do gap reporting for the federal budget, and they include the unfunded liabilities of Medicare and Social Security, which, by the way, is a much bigger problem than the funded debt. The funded debt's only around 100% of GDP. The unfunded liabilities of Medicare and Social Security are estimated somewhere around $60 trillion. The estimates vary widely, but at $60 trillion, that's something like 400% of GDP. So, unfortunately, we are just caught in a never-ending cycle of borrowing and consuming. But Absolutely. Thanks for your call. I appreciate your joining us this evening. The political side of things is very frustrating. That's why, from an investment point of view, we try to focus on the opportunities as opposed to, we know what the problems are in the United States. So we try to focus on the opportunities overseas, being able to achieve good dividends, being able to achieve positive growth in some of those economies overseas, being in precious metals. I was noting the other day there was an article that said, oh, look, gold is down $40 an ounce. Gold bugs are, this is it. This is the end of gold. Of course, they've been saying that this is nothing more than a little correction that is part of any healthy bull market. At any point in history, at any point in time, you're always going to see little corrections in a bull market. But gold is up better than 30% this year, or rather, I should say that the U.S. dollar is down 30% this year. Remember, gold is really just fixed, but it's a shame when there's so much distortion and that people then jump on a little correction and say, "Oh, look, gold is useless. Gold is meaningless. You don't need gold." Blah blah blah. And in reality, it's the dollar that's useless. It's the dollar that is being printed like there's no tomorrow, and destroying the currency. I'm being told by the booth now that we have got Peter joining us. Peter, are you on the line with us?
I'm here, live from the campaign trail.
I love it. How are you doing today?
I was driving back from the Hartford area. I spoke to a relatively small group of students tonight. It's too bad it falls on the evening of the show, but there's stuff going on every night. It's hard to just carve out the Wednesdays. I'm hoping to get some of the young people, some of the kids on the college campuses to rally around my candidacy. So I've got to go out and meet with them. And unfortunately, tonight fell on the show night. I know a lot of times when I miss the shows, I get some emails from people, and you got to understand, if I'm going to try to win the Senate seat, I've got to, make the campaign more of a priority and let the show take a little bit of a back burner so that I could do that. Also, I remember I'm taping the video blog, so watch those. If I don't do the show, I actually recorded one earlier today, and I thought it was posted, but it didn't take. So I'm going to try to get it reposted up there when I get home in maybe about a half hour, 45 minutes, and I'm going to get that up on the internet. But the campaign is picking up. We opened up our headquarters in Milford. It just started this week. We've got the official kickoff party, I think, coming next week. News came out today in the polls that I'm finally beating Chris Dodd in the head-to-head matchup. I'm beating him by just 1 point, but that's the first time I've been ahead of him. He's always been ahead of me. He was behind some of the other candidates, but now he's behind me as well. But the key is, though, I need to move up in the polls, with the other Republicans, and that's what the goal is now. And so anybody that wants to help out in that regard, go to my website at shiftforsenate.com and make a donation. If you haven't donated, sign up to volunteer. I know I've been talking about the ways we're going to use the volunteers. It's going to happen. It's been frustrating to me. It's been taking them so long to get this program set up so that the volunteers can make calls. Hopefully it will happen soon. In the meantime, I see a lot of people are doing stuff on their own. I read a lot of articles now on the internet about the campaign, about me, and I see a lot of comments about me, a lot of positive comments, sometimes where the reporters forget to mention my name. I see that some of my fans are reminding them of that. So that's all great. I mean, anything that you guys can do to help keep my name in the media, in the press, writing comments, all that stuff helps, and all that stuff works. Meanwhile, just a little quick comment on what's been going on in the markets. Over the last week or so since I did the last show, we've had a pretty big correction in the price of gold after making a new record high late last week. Gold dropped close to $100 an ounce or so. Again, it causes people to think, oh, bubble, get out, it's going to collapse. Those of us who have been buying gold for the last 10 years know that this is par for the course. It always goes like this. It never goes straight up. It goes up, and then there's a violent move down. It shakes out the weak players. It keeps the timid on the sidelines, and we climb that wall of worry. Same thing, we had a small bounce in the dollar. I think it's insignificant. The real trend of the dollar is down. Unfortunately, Congress, the president, and the Federal Reserve are making sure that. You guys were talking earlier about the TARP money. I mean, first of all, the TARP is not going to cost us less than they thought. It's going to cost us more. Just because some of the banks are returning the money doesn't mean they're not going to need to be bailed out again 6 months or a year from now. They will, because the only reason they're able to return the money is because they're gambling with the taxpayer footing the bill. And they're also, using phony accounting to exaggerate the assets on their balance sheet. Meanwhile, the two big fail firms are getting bigger and bigger, so the next time they fail, it's going to take even more government money to bail them out. And I'm sure that money is going to be coming. Meantime, when they're talking about using this TARP money that's being paid back by the banks for job stimulus, since we borrowed the money from the Chinese in the first place, if we get a little bit back temporarily, we don't want to go and spend it on something else. And, of course, they're talking about spending the unused TARP funds. That money doesn't even exist. That's simply money that we were going to borrow that we haven't borrowed yet. And if we're not going to borrow it for the TARP, the logic of the Barack Obama is, well, let's just borrow it for something else. Well, how about let's not borrow it at all? That's what they should be thinking. But no, these politicians, they never saw a spending program they didn't like. They don't care how they finance it, borrow, print, whatever. They're going to do it. That's why the credit rating on U.S. sovereign debt is going to be downgraded. And if it's not officially downgraded, it's going to be downgraded in the market when people figure out the kind of wool that we're trying to pull over their eyes on this. And Barack Obama patted himself on the back today when he claimed that if it wasn't for him, we'd be in a depression right now. He says that he rode to the rescue on his white horse, that it was his economic policies that saved us from the brink, that we were facing a Great Depression, and he saved us. That's not the truth. We were facing a great recession, no doubt about it. That would have been beneficial to the economy had we allowed it to happen. But instead, we got all this phony stimulus, and now we are facing a Great Depression because of President Obama. And it could be a greater depression because it's going to be characterized potentially by hyperinflation. And if it's not that bad, it's going to be massive inflation that maybe causes the government to finally do the right thing to avoid a hyperinflation. But then we end up with a much worse economic downturn than the one we would have had we not gone for another dose of monetary and fiscal stimulus. The numbers that we're getting from the jobs data or the GDP, none of this is reflecting a renewed economic growth like the president says. All it reflects is more borrowed money that we've spent. It just shows how much bigger a hole we've dug for ourselves. We are trillions and trillions of dollars deeper in debt with nothing to show for it. Meanwhile, we keep losing manufacturing jobs. The industrial base of our economy is decaying further. We're not repairing it. We're not rebuilding it. Meanwhile, Congress is now closer to passing some version of some socialized, expanded health care, expanding Medicare. That's a disaster. We can't even afford the Medicare program we got now, let alone the supercharged version that the Senate is approving. They're still making some movement, I think, on cap and trade or, cap and tax or whatever you want to call it. That's another nail in our economic coffin. These guys are just completely clueless, oblivious to how bad these problems are, and they're working as hard as they can to make them worse. I mean, President Obama said in his conference today that he's not going to rest until everybody who wants a job has a job. Well, you know what? If he gave it a rest, maybe we could have jobs. It's because Barack Obama is working so hard to undermine our economy and to punish entrepreneurs. He's destroying jobs. That's what he's busy doing. It's the free market that's going to create jobs. If the government would unleash it, if the government would get out of the way and allow profits and allow capital to be formed. If Barack Obama was serious about job creation, he would be shrinking government, not expanding it. He would be lowering taxes, not raising them. He would be abolishing regulations, not writing new ones. That's what we need to do. And that's why I'm out here. That's why I'm going to these town meetings and spending all this time trying to run for Senate, because somebody has got to get to Washington before it's too late. Someone's got to bash some sense into the heads of these politicians, including President Obama and all of his economic advisors, where the sum total of all their knowledge of economics, I mean, you could write it on a matchbook. All they're doing is trying to promote policies that enrich themselves, that enrich Wall Street and the financiers and the people who are making a bundle, transacting and financing all this debt as they suffocate the real economy and soak the taxpayer and soak the country, with all this cheap money and all this regulation. But I'm going to do my best, and hopefully we'll see what happens next Wednesday. I'm not really sure what my schedule is. Hopefully I'll be able to do the show. I actually could do it for the hour, but I'm not even sure how good this connection is on my cell phone, driving back in the sleet and the snow from the Hartford area back to my home in Weston. So I'll.
Well, Peter, we want you to be safe driving, but we do have a caller on the air who had a question for you specifically.
Well, don't worry, I'm not driving myself. I got somebody else driving the car. So
okay, I'd like to invite Bob in Michigan to speak with us. Bob, are you there?
Yes, I am. Hi, Peter.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, hey, Peter. My concern. I mean, when I look at Great Britain, and as a socialist government or a socialist society, but still has a conservative party. And then you look at America, and I think you can make the argument that most Americans are, somehow, some way subsidized by the government, whether it's student loans, subsidies, Medicare, Social Security, FDIC, whatever. In some fashion or another, they are kind of subsidized by that. My question to you is that if you were elected into Congress, to what degree, being a conservative, to what degree do you feel, how many nails do you got to remove out of that economic coffin to reach the satisfaction that you're living by your conservative values? And how effective do you think you can be when so many people are in one way or another subsidized by the government to keep the people behind that goal of making America strong economically, while they're losing their individual, have to sacrifice and lose their own individual subsidies?
Yeah, I had that question in front of the students I just spoke to. Look, I know that there are always occasions where people rise to the level of the occasion. Ordinary Americans go into the military, they find themselves in combat, and they act heroically. And there are a lot of people that do that, and they just rise to the occasion. And I am hopeful that there are a lot of heroes in Congress and in the Senate that if they just simply understood what was at stake and they had somebody to point them in the right direction, that they would make the right decision, that they're not evil people, they're not bad people, they're just misguided people, and that if somebody could guide them, they'll do the right thing, and they'll put their country ahead of their own political career. They'll put principle and ideology ahead of political expediency. I have to believe that there's a chance of success. If I didn't think there was a chance, I wouldn't be spending my time.
So you don't think that the right's going to be kicking and screaming all the way while the left is dragging them through one more program as we turn into more socialists and end up having this conservative party that's just ineffective?
I'm hoping that when things are at their darkest, Americans will see the light. And we'll make the right change. We have to be hopeful and optimistic that, our future isn't set in stone, that there is, a way out of it. And, we could sit back and do nothing and just accept the fate. I mentioned, to the kids that I was speaking to today, I said, look, if we don't do something, then they might as well learn to speak Mandarin, because that's the language they're going to need to know. and they're going to be and get prepared to leave the country. So if we want to try to repair this country and bring back the prosperity of the past and bring back the culture of the past that led to that prosperity, we can do it. Let's not give up without a fight. A lot of our ancestors, spilled blood to create this country. Let's not just give it up without a fight.
So that you would eliminate FDIC as well. I mean, because that adds a huge amount of.
Well, sure. I mean, if I could, just dictate the policy, yes. I don't think that we should have government insuring bank deposits. If they want to insure very small deposits, I still don't like it, but it's better than now. Now they insure unlimited amounts. I mean, if you want to insure the small guys, 5 or 10,000 or 20,000, but if somebody has a substantial amount of money, if someone is smart enough to save up $100,000 or $200,000, they ought to be smart enough to understand that you need to check out the bank and make sure that it's sound. Make sure it's not, check into some consumer protection agencies that might be rating banks privately. We want consumers to be empowered to regulate businesses on their own with their feet, and you vote with your feet. We don't need the government, protecting us from buying, a bad laptop computer or buying the market does that. People compete for competition. There's all sorts of free market safeguards to help consumers make choices in the products that they buy. Let's let that market work in the financial industry for the bank accounts that people open. It's nonsense. The government has to insure these accounts. That is the primary reason for the moral hazard. The reason that banks got involved with so much risky activity was because the government was guaranteeing all the deposits.
Well,
Bob, thank you for your call. Peter, we'd like to get some more callers on the air with you. We've got Christina in Washington,
well, as
D.C.
long as the connection is okay, I'm happy to stay on line.
We'd like to have you join us for as long as possible. Christina in Washington, D.C., you're on the air. Are you with us now?
Yes. Sorry
Christina,
about before.
You're on with Peter Schiff.
All right, thank you. Hi, Peter. I'm a big fan. I have a question. You've talked a lot about how computer manufacturing is a strong industry in this country, and I was wondering why that industry has stayed strong when we're losing manufacturing jobs in other areas. What is it?
Well, we're losing manufacturing jobs in technology right now. More and more of tech manufacturing has already moved offshore. We still do some of it, and we do a lot of programming and software engineering and things like that. But a good chunk of the manufacturing end of that industry has already moved offshore. But we need to act soon before we lose the rest of it.
Mm-hmm. Is there a reason why that area of manufacturing hasn't been completely decimated, though? Is it that they're not unionized, or?
Well, that's part of it, and it's newer. The technology is newer. The investments have been made. We're still. We have pockets of manufacturing left and innovation left, and we're gradually losing the edge. But certainly in the companies that don't have the unions associated with the manufacturing, or maybe there's more automation involved in the manufacturing process, so they're not as labor intensive. We don't have to deal with some of the excessive demands imposed in other manufacturing industries on labor by the government and all the rules and the things that they impose and how much they run up the cost of employment. But ultimately, manufacturers in this country have to deal with a tax system that is very burdensome, compared to the way businesses are taxed in other countries, and a regulatory environment that is more onerous here. And it's just, ultimately we can't compete because, we've got this giant gorilla on our back.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Peter, and good luck in your run for Senate.
Thank you. I'd appreciate any support you can give me in that run.
Thank you.
I'll be helping.
Thank you, Christina, for joining us. Peter, since we've got you on the line and since you're not driving, I'm glad you're safe. We'd like to have you talk with a couple more of our callers this evening. Dale in California, you're on the line with Peter Schiff.
Peter, I got a question for you about your Senate campaign. Now, Thomas Woods at Mises says that the great thing about Austrian economics is that when people hear about it, they are attracted to it because it all makes sense. But when you get on TV shows, you have otherwise intelligent people that are fighting you tooth and nail and resisting everything that you're saying. I was wondering if you feel that the ordinary voter would also resist the message because maybe it's not as easy to sell as we'd like to think.
I think it is a pretty easy message to sell. I think that some of the people I'm on television with have been so indoctrinated, over the years in our universities and through the media that they don't know common sense. When it's right in front of their eyes, it's more of a cognitive dissonance. I think that the economics is a lot simpler than the mainstream economists make it out. And I think people can fundamentally see that, most of these economists don't know what the hell they're talking about. And, I've got a book that's coming out, I think in April, How an Economy Grows and Why It Crashes. That's a expansion and a rewriting of my dad's book, but it's far more extensive and up to date. And it explains these economic principles in very, very simple terms that I think a lot of people will understand. And that book will be out, before the election, and hopefully, people will have it in the stores and be able to read it and appreciate, the mess that we're in, and how the politicians caused it, how they're making it worse, and what needs to be done so that the market can solve the problems that the politicians have created.
Does it frustrate you that guys like Rob Simmons and Linda McMahon are still ahead of you slightly on some of the polling?
Well, no. I mean, what do you expect? I mean, Rob Simmons has been a congressman. He's run 3 statewide elections. People know who he is, and so he's got good name recognition. He's an okay public servant. He's been in the military. He's had a long career in politics. People know him. The Republican establishment likes him because he'll follow in line and lockstep with what they want to do. So it doesn't surprise me. He's been running for over a year. It certainly doesn't surprise me that he's where he is in the polls. Linda McMahon has come in with her guns blazing. She's spending millions and millions of dollars already on advertising. She's spending a ton of money. She's saying she's going to spend up to $50 million of her own money. $50 million buys a lot of press, buys a lot of infrastructure. So it doesn't surprise me that she's, jumping out to a lead. But ultimately, I think that I can get my message out. I'm just starting. I don't have the money that Linda does, and I don't have the name recognition and the political connections of a Rob Simmons, but I have the truth. I think I'm a better candidate. I'm a more charismatic speaker. I understand the issues better. I think the public is ready for my type of candidacies, for real change, for a real outsider to come in to shake things up in Washington. And, the media, initially, I don't blame them for not taking it seriously. In their eyes, I'm just out there, a fringe guy, a Ron Paul kind of guy, a libertarian, whatever they want to define me or characterize me. But I just got to show them that it's more than that the message will resonate, that the public is ready for, the type of campaign that I'm going to run and the message that I'm going to deliver. And I think my numbers can rise in the polls. I mean, maybe I won't be able to do it, but I think there's a good chance. I think I like my position now. I mean, you got 2 candidates in the race, and I think each of them has negatives. And I think for people who don't want to, fall into either one of these camps, I am the real, legitimate, only alternative out there. And I think as I get my message out, I think more and more people will not simply choose me by default because they don't like the other 2, but they'll actually like me. They'll actually switch their allegiance because I don't think either of these 2 candidates has a loyal following. I think people are supporting a name that they know, a name that they recognize, and that's it. And I think the reason that more people aren't supporting me is because they don't know who I am. But if they understood my story and they understood,
Any possibility of a debate in the primaries?
There is a debate schedule. I think whether it is, I think it's not until maybe March or April, but yeah, there is a debate scheduled for the 3 of us, and, I will be there. I wish there was more of them sooner, but, the other candidates don't really want to debate me for good reason. Right. So they'll try to minimize the number of debates. I mean, they'd love to be able to debate each other, but, there's no way they're going to debate each other without including me, so consequently, they're not going to debate.
Well, good luck to you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Look, everybody that's listening, again, you can do your thing. Volunteer on the website. We're going to have this program ready for you guys to call the voters and get that name out there and raise my name ignition. In the meantime, the stuff you can do, call radio talk shows, bring up my candidacy, talk about me on these national, especially the ones that Republicans might listen to. Try to get, call up Rush Limbaugh, call up these big shows. Hey, do you know about Peter Schiff? Do you know about his campaign? Go to the internet when you see articles about Linda McMahon or Rob Simmons or Chris Dodd. Put a comment in there. Hey, have you looked at Peter Schiff? Have you read Crash Proof? Peter Schiff's the best candidate. All that kind of stuff helps.
Excellent. And I want to also give out the 800 number for the show this evening. The number is 888-678-9597. We've got Peter Schiff on the line here with us. Let's move right on to the next caller. Jim in California, you are on the line with Peter Schiff. Good evening.
Good evening. Hi, Peter.
Hey, Jim, how are you?
I'm good. Hey, I've got two quick questions and a comment. For Christine specifically, she mentioned and was asking you about the tech industry. I work in tech, and things are actually pretty dicey at the moment. Just quick story, I have a headhunter pitching me on a gig in Prague, and all of this guy's open recs are overseas. That should give you some indication of how things are out here. But my questions are pretty straightforward. You've talked a lot about your long-term price target for gold being about $5,000, and then you also say that silver may outperform gold. As such, do you guys have a long-term price target for silver? And my second question was, Bernanke had gave a speech back in Japan in 2003 on deflation, and he said that central banks should not just inject liquidity to stop price declines, but rather central banks should actually try and inject liquidity to push prices back up to where they were prior to the economic dislocation, which I think is completely insane. But I'd like to get your reaction to that perspective.
Yeah, first of all, for price targets, the media always wants a price target, so I say 5,000. Who knows? It could go higher than that. Silver, someone said, where do I think silver could go? A realistic move? Maybe $200 an ounce, Wow. I think it could go a lot higher, especially towards the end of the bull market when prices tend to, get absurd. But, if we have real hyperinflation, if we go down that route, then, we don't even know what the price is going to be because there might not even be a number high enough to describe it. But assuming that we don't have that, but there is going to be a big bull market in precious metals. Well, what was the second part of your question? I just forgot.
So Bernanke gave a speech on deflation, and he talked about, injecting liquidity not only to stop price declines in a deflationary environment, but he wanted his actual objective was to get falling prices to go back to where they were.
Yeah, that's the deflation is exactly what the economy. See, falling prices is exactly what this economy needs. Prices are too high, and they need to come down. To say that the government needs to take action to prevent that is preposterous. First of all, for people who are unemployed, wouldn't they benefit if food prices came down? If energy prices came down, we'd all benefit from that. If healthcare prices came down, if education prices came down, lower prices would help all consumers, especially those that are struggling with debt. In addition, real estate prices, they're too high. Nobody can afford to buy a house today without a government-guaranteed loan and a tax credit. We need to let real estate prices fall to where the market would bring them, to a level where people can afford to buy them without the gimmicks, without the guarantees, without the credits and the artificial low interest rates. We can't keep interest rates at zero so that we can artificially inflate home prices because we're destroying capital. We're chasing investment capital out of the country. We're never going to have jobs. We're never going to have a real economy if we have a phony price structure and artificially low interest rates.
I agree completely, Peter, but the insanity of trying to get those housing prices back to where they were in 2005, that's something that I find to be pretty radical.
The problem is not that housing prices are coming down. That's the solution. The problem is that they went up. They went up too much. They never should have went up. That was the problem. But when real estate prices were in a bubble, the politicians loved it. They were cheerleading it. That was manna from heaven, as far as they're concerned, because it created the illusion of wealth, and voters who thought they were wealthy were happy to go to the polls and reelect the politicians that they thought were responsible. But now that we're waking up from this stupor, we can't try to resurrect bubble home prices. We have to let the bubble pop.
You know what? If things don't work out in Connecticut, please move to California and try and take out Boxer or Feinstein, please.
And then they'll accuse me of being a carpetbagger. But look, anyway, I'm about to pull into my driveway, so I'll probably lose the connection. So let me sign off, and you can finish off the show just for the last 9 minutes or so. And don't forget to give out the number for Euro Pacific Capital. People can call and open up accounts, tell them about Crash Proof and the campaign website and all that. But thanks, you did a great job. Maybe it's good to do the show with a co-host. It makes it a little easier.
A lot more fun. And, Peter, just to build on Jim and Christina's point about manufacturing, you and I have a good friend in California who works for Cisco Systems, and he has informed me that although Cisco manufactures networking equipment, they don't do any manufacturing themselves. It's all contracted out to Asia. It's all contracted out to manufacturers who are able to operate.
Now, isn't that a shame? Isn't that a shame that we can't do that ourselves? We've got all these Americans who are unemployed, yet Cisco is sending the work offshore. Why is that? Why is that happening? It's because of government policy that is rendering our economy unproductive and inefficient. That's why Cisco has to do that. I want to go to Washington and stop that. We're investing at Euro Pacific Capital. We're investing our clients' money abroad. I'd rather invest it here. But I can't do that with the monetary and fiscal policy currently in place.
That's right. I'd like to share that website.
Off. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Peter, thank you very much for joining us. I know the callers are always thrilled to be able to speak with you.
Check out the show the last few minutes. All right.
Will do.
So long.
Have a good evening. To Peter's point, the 800 number for the company itself is 800-727-7922. We do have brokers. I'm in the Los Angeles office. We do have brokers in the Los Angeles office who are available and who can help you if you are looking to protect yourself against what we think is going to be a pretty nasty period for the U.S. economy and the U.S. dollar going forward. The recession that we have just gone through was really just the warm-up act. The real recession is yet to come. All we did over the past 12 to 18 months, as Peter had said, is just build up a massive debt bubble. You've got Obama and his colleagues in the Democratic Congress that are just spending until their daddy takes the credit card away, and they're just spending. That's all they know how to do. They've got one button. It says spend, and they're continuing to press it. So we invest overseas because the next collapse in the dollar, the U.S. economy, the U.S. Treasury, is not going to be able to borrow infinite amounts of money to try and keep us afloat any longer. That process will come to a close very, very soon, unfortunately. In terms of the Senate race, I would like to share the campaign website with you once more. It is Schiff4Senate.com. 4 is spelled out F-O-R, Schiff for Senate. And, Peter has got a lot of energy. Obviously, he speaks from the heart. He believes in his ideas. He is a true agent of change in the sense that he is prescribing policies and ideas for the U.S. economy that are going to allow us, hopefully, to compete once again in the global marketplace. Unfortunately, we have not been successfully competing for very long. Let's go to Daniel in Michigan. Daniel, welcome this evening. I'm Neeraj Chaudhary. I'm hosting for Peter Schiff tonight.
Hi.
How are you? What's your question this evening?
Oh well, I was going to ask about this gold correction that occurred at Friday.
Yes.
I had a theory that this correction comes from temporarily because we had better economic results. Well, I think 0.11% less unemployment usually.
Yeah, a lot of people were making a lot of noise about the jobs number that came out on Friday and saying, oh, wait a minute, it looks like the economy is fine after all. Everything's fine. Everything's great. And, if you put that into the broader context, as Peter did, and point out that most of those jobs are temporary jobs or government jobs, you strip out those two categories, and the number does not look nearly as rosy.
Yes. And I think those jobs that we got were from thanks to the holiday season, because a lot of temporary jobs, a lot of government jobs that will go away as soon as mid-January, probably. So
that's right, mid-January, if not sooner.
Yeah, if not sooner. So the gold price will start to rise then again, because people will realize we have a lot of problems. And but my question was more about: is it possible for gold to fall behind 1100 to now?
We don't really make short-term predictions in the price of gold.
But
might gold experience a temporary correction below 1100? I mean, anything's possible. A good, solid bull market does have a healthy correction, and so a few percentage points could easily bring it down below 1100. But that's not really the focus of our firm. And remember also, Peter makes this point very often, gold is actually real money. Gold is cash. Gold is relatively fixed. My branch manager, Hemant Kathuria, who many of you know, points out to all of us regularly, that the production of gold, no matter how much they try to extract out of the ground, no matter how much mining and production takes place in a given year, the total amount of gold in the world only expands by about 1 to 1.5% per year. And so gold is the currency that is fixed. It's really the U.S. dollar and the remaining fiat currencies that are falling against gold. So might they have some intermediate corrections where people think, oh, it's gone too far, maybe I'll hold on to my dollars again? Sure, it's certainly possible. But in the long term, we simply do not see any policies being taken by the administration, the Congress, the Federal Reserve, or any of the other parties that are in power. We simply do not see positive steps being taken to restore the prosperity that Peter spoke about. I read a statistic somewhere that in the post-World War II period, immediately after World War II, the United States was responsible for something on the order of 70% of the world's industrial production. These days, the U.S. economy, consumption and debt-laden as it is represents about 20% of the world's economy, and it's falling fast because the growth rates are all overseas. Now, granted, the post-World War II period was a very unique period in world history that, unfortunately, because of the war, the rest of the world needed a generation to build itself up. But really, since 1971, that's the date that most people point to when talking about how and when the United States started down this unfortunate path of increasing financial regulation, or increasing regulation, increasing taxes, increasing the burdens on businesses, and not allowing businesses to do what they do best, not allowing people to do what they do best, which is innovate, create, work hard, protect for their families, provide for their families. So the sooner we can get back to that, the better. I'm going to sign off. Thank you very much. It's been my sincere pleasure to join you this week, and we look forward to having Peter back next week. This is Neeraj Chaudhary for Wall Street Unspun, Peter Schiff. Have a great week, folks. Thanks. Bye-bye.